Welcome to Cinematic Recaps. This movie is called 16 Block. The movie is about aging alcoholic detective Jack Mosley, who is assigned to deliver a prisoner to the court 16 blocks away from his precinct in 118 minutes. Eddie Bunker made a deal with the DA office and will identify and testify against a dirty detective. While driving to the tribunal, Jack is attacked by a group of corrupt cops and protects Eddie. Sit back and enjoy to see what happens. In the first scene of the film, Jack Mosley is sitting in a bus and recording a message for Christina. He says he wants Christina to know what actually transpired here, regardless what the police may claim. And then the screen disappears. We see cops entering a New York City apartment complex where they discover two Latino gangbangers who have been shot and killed. The captain says to call on someone they don't need to keep an eye on the scene while they clear the area and wait for the coroner to arrive. They mention Jack at this point, who seems to be a cop nearing the end of his career. He enters the flat and, in violation of protocol, touches everything there and looks for booze. Drinking while working is undoubtedly not helpful, since he appears gloomy and out of it. Then, when we see him arrive at his workplace, it appears like he has been working late and hasn't yet had a chance to sleep. Jack walks with a little limp, giving away how his career as a top detective came to an end the day he lost the ability to walk correctly. He receives a fairly straightforward case file, which was often handled by new officers, from his captain as he is about to leave the office. In order to testify in front of a grand jury, he requests that Mosley accompany the witness Eddie Bunker to the courthouse, which is 16 blocks from the station. He is given 118 minutes to complete this. Although Jack protests, he is compelled to accept it, so he does. Eddie Bunker, an African-American who engages in talking throughout the day, is shown here being led out of a holding cell by Jack. Eddie is handcuffed in the car and continues to chat, which irritates Jack. Jack decides that he has time because of the heavy traffic and stops at a liquor store to get a drink while Eddie is left in the vehicle. A man in a cleaning service uniform approaches the car as Jack is purchasing booze and pulls a gun. But as Jack exits the store, the man is shot and killed. Chaos ensues as a result of the gunfire, and it appears that Jack was rendered motionless by it. As a result, it appears that he was unaware that a second gunman was shooting at him. More shots are fired, and Jack runs into the car, rams it into the shooter, and drives off. Jack urges the proprietor to eject everyone from the pub, including himself, as he brings Eddie inside a bar that he appears to be extremely familiar with. When Jack contacts the station to request assistance, homicide investigator Frank Nugent and his team instead show up at the bar. Frank is a composed individual who speaks clearly and with such a laid-back tone. He claims to have been nearby when the call came in, so he stopped by to provide assistance. Frank says he will handle the rest. Jack is going to comply, but Eddie is still talking this time because he hasn't stopped since they were shot at. He is constantly complaining about why Jack would endanger his life and stop for a drink. However, when a second detective enters the establishment, Eddie abruptly stops speaking as though he recognized the man, and Jack understands that there is a problem. Frank continues by informing Jack that Eddie will be testifying in court against a number of dirty police officers, including a chief. By revealing what he observed, he will ruin the lives of many honorable police officers. It is shown in various scenes that Eddie saw corrupt police officers carrying out unlawful deals, including the murder of some men. Jack's gun is taken away by Frank, who then gives it to his men. The men clean the weapon before placing it in Eddie's hand. Then they shoot while Eddie is still holding the gun, giving the impression that he tried to kill the policeman by stealing the weapon. Eddie is being kept hostage and is about to be put to death there in the pub. Jack shoots the police officers in the legs using the bar owner's weapon. He exits the rear door with Eddie. Frank is now extremely enraged, but he still keeps his composure. He asks for more reinforcements to help him find Jack and Eddie, stating that Jack lost it and started shooting at the police. Due to his knowledge of the whereabouts of the extra key, Jack enters an apartment that he most likely once lived in. He goes inside and looks in the closet for his rifle. Frank instructs one of his men to check out the flat since he knows that Jack's sister lives nearby. However, when the man arrives, Jack ties him up and takes away his cell phone. The cell phone pickup is actually a bad idea because Frank can use GPS to determine their precise location. This continues until Eddie tries to flee by using the subway alone and turning down assistance from an inebriated, disabled police officer. When some police officers arrive on the subway and start trying to kill him, he quickly changes his mind. In Chinatown in New York, where a festival is taking place, Jack throws the phone into the trash and walks into an old apartment complex knowing they have nowhere to flee. An elderly Asian man actually answers one of the doors. Eddie continues hammering on and lets Jack and Eddie inside. The team looks for them from floor to floor but is unable to locate them. Eddie changes clothes at the apartment and informs Jack that he wants to work as a birthday cake baker. Everywhere he goes, he keeps a notebook with him that contains all of the cake recipes in existence, along with a list of everyone's birthdays. Jack contacts the district attorney from his residence and tells the whole scenario. As soon as Jack gives her the precise address and room number, she sends escorts to bring them outside securely. The difference this time is that Frank's team learns the information from the mole, breaks into the wrong apartment, and realizes Jack has duped them. Now that there are no barriers in his path, Jack proceeds down the steps only to be stopped by Frank, who is waiting at the bottom step. But Jack is not a fool, as evidenced by the fact that he had Eddie turn around and aim the rifle at Frank from behind. Eddie and Jack go out the door after escaping another close call. This time, Jack brings Eddie underground to a laundry shops. Frank, with whom Jack worked for 20 years, also appears to be familiar with New York City. While Frank's men are hiding behind a steel door, Frank cuts them off and begins another shootout. Between the door and Frank, Eddie and Jack are confined. The broken elevator is the sole means of escape. In this moment, we hear Jack and Frank reminisce about their shared past experiences. Jack responds by telling Frank that individuals do not change when Frank tries to persuade him that Eddie is a thief and has all the bad convictions. Eddie either denies it or claims to have changed. The elevator finally begins to function, and Jack and Eddie board it and ride to the top floor. Once they are in the open, they instantly board a bus while being pursued by two of Frank's men. When they fire the tires, the bus spins off and into a dead end. The bus holds 31 people prisoner as a result of the circumstances. The commissioner and the news crew, along with the full SWAT unit, have arrived. Frank needs to exercise caution when acting. Even though there are only 31 hostages, Jack instructs the passengers to cover the bus windows with newspapers and informs the authorities that there are approximately 40 hostages. While they wait, Jack purchases additional time by requesting that the public defender, a press crew, and a stenographer be present before he releases any hostages. Eddie is actually speaking to a sweet young child, urging her not to be scared and promising to give her a lovely birthday cake on her special day. Jack releases everyone on the bus just as the SWAT team is about to enter, and he even changed Eddie's clothing with those of another passenger. All of the officers are perplexed by Jack's behavior. As the passengers emerge and begin to flee for their lives, Eddie is caught up in the commotion. Jack stays inside and feels as though he has completed his task by freeing Eddie. The bus driver then informs the police that Jack is the only passenger on board while they are still under the impression that there are 9 more hostages. At this point, the SWAT team is prepared to kill Jack because they had been informed that he shot some police officers earlier. Eddie then appears out of nowhere, begs everyone not to shoot, and boards the bus once more. Eddie challenges Jack over his claim that people don't change because he wants Jack to think that they do. Thus, after destroying a few police cars, Jack and Eddie still succeed in escaping the dead end despite all of their flat tires. But the entire SWAT squad is pursuing them, shattering windows, firing guns, and hurling flash and smoke grenades into the bus. As the bus is stalled in an alley, it stops. Jack and Eddie have gotten out of the bus and into a nearby building by the time the SWAT team enters the vehicle. Eddie was shot in the stomach this time, so Jack calls on the assistance of his sister Christina, a paramedic who also drives an ambulance. She helps Eddie and is able to make him whole when she arrives. Jack makes another request of the sister as they make their way to the courthouse. When Christina refuses to open the doors when Frank stops the ambulance, he discovers that nothing is inside. In fact, Jack did them a favor by dispatching a different ambulance to transport them to a location nearby at the courthouse. Jack tells Eddie that he himself is a bad person, and says he is a member of the corrupt police force which Eddie was going to testify against. He will now accept full responsibility. Eddie is asked to leave so that Jack can handle the trial alone in order to testify against himself. Frank, who is usually one step ahead of Jack, is waiting for him as Jack stumbles through the courthouse's underground door. Jack confronts Frank about all of their misdeeds, including having individuals killed in order to obtain the evidence they require to solve certain cases. Frank finally loses it, yells at Jack, and tells Jack everything. He instructs one of his guys waiting for Jack upstairs to kill him since he simply cannot kill his long-term partner with his own hands. Instead, he lets Jack enter the elevator. Jack is identified by the building security and is surrounded by numerous police officers. Jack adds that he just wants to speak with the prosecutor and that he has proof against other police officers, including the chief, as well as himself. Frank's man still approaches him with the intention of shooting him, but a SWAT officer shoots him instead after finally realizing what is happening. Jack pulls out a tape recorder that recorded the entire conversation that Frank and Jack just had downstairs, and hands it to the prosecuting attorney. Frank glares pitifully and walks away as he is carried away. 2 years later, Jack is seen dining out with his sister and a few friends to celebrate his birthday. Eddie sent in the birthday cake, which he inscribed with the phrase "People do change." Along with the cake, he wrote a letter to Jack and attached some photos of him and his new bakery. And that is the end of this movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for daily updates of movie recaps like this. Comment what movie you want next. Thanks for watching.